Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Winchester Wellness Meets. And this time we're meeting Hampshire cricketing legend Kris Woods, or to his friends and colleagues known as Woody, who plays for Hampshire Cricket as a left-handed bowler and a right-handed batsman. Woody, welcome to the vlog.
Cheers, Kris. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Good stuff. So Woody, maybe if we can just open up by understanding how you first got into cricket. What were your earliest memories of playing, and how did you get into the sport to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, my dad played village cricket from an early age. So from the age of sort of 7, 8, I was going to watch him, and I very quickly identified that I enjoyed the sport. And then before I know it, I was playing for Liphook as an under-10s, which played in the Hampshire League, and then very lucky to go on through the Hampshire age groups from there.
Fantastic. And when did you first really thought you had a chance of making a career out of it? You know, taking a passion, a sport, a hobby, and actually making it your livelihood?
Yeah, relatively late, actually, to be honest. I was quite a late bloomer in the sense of getting into the academy. Most guys tend to get in the academy at age kind of 15, 16. But I was quite a late developer, and I didn't make it into the academy till a 16, 17-year-old. And I was sort of to and fro in my mind, was I going to make it as a professional? Because it's quite a fickle environment in the sense that I think on average, one academy player a year moves on to a professional contract. So it's quite a strong environment, and not many get selected to move on to professional contracts. And I guess when I first really believed I had a chance was when I come back from my first stint with England under-19s as an 18-year-old, and I done quite well, and I got back to Hampshire, and that was when I first thought that there might be something sort of in this career for me. And luckily, when I got back to camp, there was a professional contract waiting for me, and that was that moment that I really thought that, you know, I could make a half decent crack out of a career out of cricket.
Fantastic stuff. So obviously you had your dad playing at an exceptionally high level, something you must obviously have looked up to at the time. Did you have any other sporting idols that you looked up to and thought that's the type of career you want to progress with?
Yeah, most definitely. I think 2005 Ashes for me was so prominent. I was a 15-year-old boy at the time, and loved cricket, and all I wanted to do was watch cricket. And with that sort of momentous Ashes and Freddie Flintoff bowling and batting the way he was, I think very much growing up as a 16, 17-year-old, he was someone that I certainly wanted to replicate my game on and hopefully become as good as. Obviously that hasn't quite happened, but I'm still lucky to still be playing in the game and had 12 years of good crack at it so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And over these 12 years, what do you think's been the highlight of your cricketing life?
That's a very good question, and I've been very lucky and very fortunate to be in some very good teams. I think I've won 4 one-day trophies, but I think the first one was very significant. 2010, it was my first full season in the T20 team, and the finals day was at home in front of not predominantly a home crowd, but sort of a home environment, and sort of winning that trophy as an 18-year-old really sets you up for what potentially could be coming in next in your career. And I guess another moment for me was 2012, the Cardiff T20, where I managed to close out the game in the last over to win the trophy. So they're 2 quite significant moments, but at the same time, winning any trophy is a great feeling.
Fantastic. And obviously being born just up the road in Basingstoke, you must have a lot of local supporters that have seen you come out through all the club cricket you've been playing for and see you progress to Hampshire. So it must be nice to have that support locally as well.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's one thing that I'll always honour. I've managed to play for my home club now for 12 years, and hopefully I can sit back at the end of my career and say that I've only played for one club, and it was Hampshire. And I think that's quite sentimental for me, and also the supporters who've come week in, week out for year on year to see homegrown players coming through the system and having a significant career for their county.
So your career hasn't been without injuries. So can you maybe touch on a couple of those injuries and how you've stayed focused and connected with the club and motivated to get back into that first team top spot?
Yeah, sure. I think injuries, as we all know, are part and parcel of sport. I've had my fair few, as you alluded to, and in there a couple of serious knee operations which have required a lot of time on the sideline, a lot of reflection, a lot of rehab, a lot of hard work and graft, and a lot of sitting back and watching your teammates while playing games of cricket while you're unfortunately unable, or you're behind closed doors doing your rehab, or you're playing in the second team and trying to get fit to get back into first team action. And it's a tough environment to be in at times. especially when you're there, you've been there numerous times and you know what it takes, and before you know it, you're there again. And like you say, all your peers are playing. It's very tough. And obviously around that comes contractual stuff as well. And being injured and being in the last year of your contract is also another thing that is very challenging, both on mind and body.
Sure. And what are kind of the strategies that you have in place now to prevent injuries or help manage them better moving forward and keeping it at the top?
Yeah, well, I think sports science as a whole has changed significantly in sort of the 12 years that I've been professional. It's come on leaps and bounds, and there's so many more options available to players now, whether it's post or pre-match game, gym programs, etc., running programs to get you in top shape to perform at the highest level. But so we have a point system, for example, after a game on recovery, and X amount of things, and not drinking alcohol or an ice bath or a protein shake or a good meal that evening, and you're asked to put in the points scored the next morning from the evening. So there's a lot more that goes into it, and I think cricket is slowly getting much more professional, and looking after yourself and sports science input is forever growing, that's for sure.
Great to hear. It's really good to hear. I mean, obviously playing and putting your body through so much stresses, whether that's training and playing, you've got to have the right support network around you. And maybe just to touch on that a bit further, what support does the club have, and what's the infrastructure to support the guys on the field?
Yeah, well, we're very lucky. We've got a couple of physios, one that will cover the first team and one cover the second team. And then during the winter programme, obviously, when we're not in season, they're combined together and look after the players that are back home and not abroad. And then we've got a couple of S&C coaches, and then on top of that, we've got club doctors who obviously will come in when people have serious injuries and whether you need to go and have a scan or see a surgeon. So we've got everything in place to enable that the best healthcare is available for the players if and when they need it.
Great, good to hear. So we also heard from your podcast that was released earlier this year, you joined Tony Adams to discuss an addiction that you had, a gambling addiction, and how over quite a long period of time you were struggling with that, but you very bravely faced up to a lot of those challenges and then felt willing enough to share that on a podcast, which is tremendously brave. So well done. Congratulations for that. I just wonder maybe if you can touch on and you can share a few stories about the things you had to face up to yourself during that period of your life.
Yeah, sure. And that's exactly what it was. You got spot on, is about facing up. I essentially 2 years ago now, roughly, when I placed my last bet, it just completely emotionally drained me and taken everything out of me. It made me the person that I never wanted to be. And if you ask people that know me, they would say that I'm a quite friendly, loving, kind of guy. And the addiction took me down a road that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And I just thought it was the right time now, where I'd started to address my problems and started to get a grip of this addiction, that to put my podcast out there and hopefully help people who could be in my situation a few years ago. It's not a situation, like I said, I'd wish on anybody. And I think gambling, especially now, is the fastest growing addiction there is out there. It's so easily accessible, and I just wanted to spread my awareness and my experience, to be honest, to hopefully enable people to not go down the path that I took.
Well, it must have taken a huge amount of courage to obviously face up to that yourself to start with, but then to also share that story. It's a really great thing you did there. What advice would you give to anyone, whether they're a sportsman or not, around facing up to addictions and what routes are there for help?
Yeah, well, I think there's plenty of routes now, certainly within professional cricket. I can't speak for other sports organisations, but obviously Sporting Chance. And my main thing that I've said all along when I've sort of come out to the public was to talk about your issues. I think that's across the whole board, to be honest, and in all mental health, not just addiction. I think a problem talked about is a problem halved. But that's the hardest thing, and I think everyone knows that, and anyone that is struggling, the hardest thing to do is talk about it. You feel like you don't want to put it on anybody's shoulders, but I think in the world we live in, I think people are very much starting to understand that it is an issue. People don't just brush it off anymore like they used to in the old days. And people in all walk of life have their issues, whether they're gambling, eating, or whatever it might be, small or large. I think the best thing people can do is talk about their problems.
Yeah, I think that's really, really sound advice. Very hard to do, as you mentioned, but very,
definitely
Very good advice.
It's easy for me to say after not doing it for 10 years, but I guess 10 years experience of not doing it is hopefully gives people enough evidence to do it.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so away from the cricket pitch then, what do you like to do to relax, unwind, take your mind off the game, take the pressure off?
Yeah, well, when I'm not injured, I like to get out on the golf course and play golf. The football days are long behind me, but growing up, I used to love playing football, and I've got a little baby daughter now, 6 months, so she's very much keeping me busy, and I'm loving having family time away from cricket. And actually lockdown in a way was a blessing in disguise for us, because our little girl came at the start of lockdown and certainly kept me busy and on my toes, but enabled me to have that initial bond that a lot of people aren't so fortunate to get. So a little bit of downtime, family time, and a bit of golf if and when the partner lets me.
Good stuff, excellent. And then back to cricket, what advice would you have to anyone who maybe is tempted to try cricket but hasn't actually, joined a club yet, or got their hands on the bat?
Yeah, well, I think give it a shot, most definitely. I think I'll speak for all sports when I say that. I think play as many sports as you can, growing up, for as long as you can. You never know which one you might become best at, and they're all very enjoyable environments to be around. And get outdoors and keep active and keep wanting to play sport is the sort of the motive that I push.
Yeah, great stuff. So you mentioned there your baby daughter. So in the fullness of time, when she's old enough to grip a cricket bat or bowl a ball, do you see her following in her father's footsteps, or what's your ambitions and views on the ladies' game of cricket?
I would love Isabella to play sport, don't get me wrong. I don't think I'm going to force her into any sport that she chooses, but any sport that she wants to take up, I'll be fully behind 100%. And as for women's cricket, as you said, it's forever growing, and rightly so. I think women's sport generally has been a long way behind men's sport, and the time has now come where it's time for them to catch up and be accounted for. And there's a lot of opportunities now in women's professional sports for sure. And England's women's cricket team, and along with the Vipers that are now down at Hampshire, and they've also got franchises in and around the 100. So there's a lot more opportunity. And definitely, if my daughter wants to go that route, I'll support her 100% in the future.
Great stuff. So finally, what do you think the rest of 2020 or beyond holds for either yourself in cricket and also Hampshire as a club as well?
Well, myself, I've actually got another knee operation coming up soon. So in the very near future, I get stuck into some rehab and hopefully back to some cricket in the new year. But hopefully next year. We've had a couple of disappointing years, especially in T20, which for such a long period of time, over sort of 6-7 years, we were the most successful club in the country by a long way. So we want to try and get that identity back, and I think that's going to come from us guys now who were the young guys when that success, but now as senior players, sort of guiding the young lads along with them putting in match-winning performances to turn sort of this rut around and get back to the Hampshire of old and winning trophies.
Sounds great. Well, Woody, thank you very much for joining us. Best of luck with the operation and the rehab as well. We look forward to performing for Hampshire next season.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Cheers.